I, Dr. Harjinder Singh, welcome all participants in this second lecture of certificate course in pesticide chemistry. In this video lecture, we will discuss classification of pesticides. Now, these pesticides, they can be classified on the basis of various categories, such as on the basis of their use, their toxicity, their mode of entry into the targets, their mode of action, their chemical structure or chemistry and formulations. So I will begin with the classification of pesticides based upon their usage or the target species. So this is a very important classification. So we can classify pesticides based upon their targets, such as it may be insect, weed, fungi, algae, or whatever, into the various categories. So the very first category is acaricides. Now here, acaricides are those substances which are used to kill mites or ticks. So they basically are used to kill mites and ticks. And the example of such acaricides are like DDT, dicophol, propoxor, and this fipronil and many others. So they are used to kill mites and ticks. The second category is algicides. Now, as its name indicates, algicide, these are the substances that are used to kill or inhibit the growth of algae. So the example of such kind of substances are copper sulfate, diuron, isoprotron, and simgin extra. The third category is antifeedants. Now, the antifeedants are those chemical substances which prevent insect or the other pest from feeding on the other animals. And the example of pesticides with these antifeedant properties are chlordimorphon, fentane, like. The next category is avicides. Now, these avicides are those chemicals which are used to kill birds. For example, phantheon is an example of this avicide. The next example is bactericides. Now, the bactericides, as the name indicates, they are used to kill microorganisms and usually bacteria. So these bactericides, they kill or inhibit the growth of bacteria in plants or soil. The example of bactericides are such as copper sulfate, streptomycin, tetracycline. They are example of these bactericides. Next are the bird repellents. So these are the chemical substances which are used to repel birds. And again, the examples are copper, oxychloride, diazonium, thiram, zerum are the examples of these bird repellents. The next one is fungicide. So again, its name clearly indicate these are the substances that are used to kill or prevent these fungi, which are very harmful substances. So there are a number of fungicides, reagents, which are pesticides, which are known. Examples includes streptomycin, vancomycin, copper oxychloride, borax mixture. All these are examples of fungicides. The next is herbicides. So what are herbicides? These are substances that are used to kill plants or weeds. Here, word herbie means, here the word herbie means plants or the weeds. The example of herbicides include Elcar, metoxaron, chlorimeron, sulfoxone. They are all examples of these herbicides. Similarly, there are insect repellents that are the substances that are used to repel these insects. And mostly, there are examples such as citronella oil. It can act as a insect repellents. Whereas insecticides are the substances that are used to kill insect. The word site, wherever it appears, that means it kills the target organism. The example of insecticides includes DTD. An example, then there are many other examples like phosphomidon, Diclorovas are the examples of insecticide. Next are the rodenticides. Now, the rodenticides are those substances which are used to kill rat and other related animals. For example, lindane and zinc phosphide are the well-known rodenticides that are also used in homes. Similarly, there may be a viricides. Now, the viricides here, viro means virus. So they are having capacity to destroy or inactive virus. For example, ribavirin. However, it is not available in India. The next classification is based upon their chemical structure. Now, based upon their chemical structure, we can classify them into the various categories. The very first one are inorganic pesticides. Now, as its name indicates, these inorganic pesticides, they mostly consist of metal salt and inorganic materials, for example, such as sulfur. And these are the very first pesticides that were used in agriculture. The other examples are other metals that may contain in these pesticides may be arsenic, fluorine, cyanides, and they are very highly toxic to the humans and other animals. For example, lead arsenate, calcium arsenate, elemental mercury, and sulfur. The second one are the natural pesticides or the botanicals. So these natural pesticides, they are obtained from the roots and stems of various plants. For example, nicotine, rotenone are the examples of these natural pesticides. Then there are synthetic organic pesticides. Now, these synthetic organic pesticides are mostly contains of organic molecules as the part of their structure. And examples are neonicotinoid pesticides. So they contains of chemical structure similar to the nicotine. Similarly, there are organophosphorus pesticides that consist of phosphorus in their structure. Now, these organophosphate pesticides they mainly affect the nervous system of the target molecule, and they're highly toxic in nature. Similarly, those pesticides which contains of carbamate linkage in their structure, they are called carbamate pesticide, and they also act as they also affect nervous system by affecting neurotransmitters. Organochloride pesticides are those which consist of chlorine in their structure, and the examples are DDT. Or BHC is also organochloride pesticide. Similarly, most of the herbicides, they are sulfonyl urea molecules that are used to kill weeds. The examples includes nicosulfuron, chlorosulfuron, and they contains of sulfonyl moiety in their structure. There's another category of these pesticides based upon their structure, chemical structure, is biopesticides. Now, these biopesticides are mostly derived from the natural materials such as animals, plants, or bacteria. And they can also be further divided into the three categories. One are the microbial pesticides, which mainly consist of bacteria or the fungus, whereas biochemical pesticide or the herbal pesticide, they mainly consist of naturally occurring substances, which may include plant material. On the other hand, the incorporated protectants, they usually contains of plants and their materials to kill the target molecules. Now, next is classification, which is based upon their formulation. Now, on the basis of formulation, we can classify these pesticides into the dry formulation and wet or the liquid formulation. The third formulation is gas formulation. Now, in dry formulation, as its name indicates, pesticide is usually a dry. And for example, it may be in the form of dust. Now, the dust formulation, it contains around 1 to 10% of the active pesticide, and it is used as such. And usually it is mixed with the inert materials such as straw, clay, powder, or ash, and it is used as such, and they are never used dry, and they are never mixed with the water. On the other hand, the second are the wettable powders. Now, these wettable powders are again the dry powder of the pesticides, and they also look like dust. But unlike these dust, they can be used with the water. And to use them, they are made to mix with the water, and that result in a formation of suspension, which is then spray over the crops or the target substances. They usually contains of high percentage of the actual pesticide, and they may contain 15 to 95% of active ingredient. The another category is granules or the pellets. Now, these granules or the pellets, they mostly contains of pesticide in the granule forms, and they usually contains of active pesticide in between 1 to 15%. Similarly, there may be dispersible granules. So that are like wettable powders. They can be dissolved in they can be mixed with the water to form a suspensions, and then they are applied to the target. Whereas bait is another kind of formulation in which active ingredient is mixed with the food or the another attractive substance. So in this way, the pesticide, it enters into the body of the target and it kill it. Whereas fumigants are the pesticide that are in the form of poisonous gases when they are applied. And they are applied in either in the gases form or in the presence of water vapors. The another category based upon the formulation is liquid formulation. Now, in case of liquid formulation, it may be used in the solution form, and it is usually mixed with the some solvent, and mostly it is like water. Second are emulsifiable concentrate or the emulsions. So here, pesticides, they are usually concentrated oils and they are mixed with the water to form small oil droplets in the water, which is kind of emulsions. Then there's a ultra low volume pesticides. Now these ultra low volume pesticides, they are usually 100%, they contains 100% active ingredients, and they are used as such or with very low dilution. The main advantages of these ultra low volume pesticides is that they can be directly used, and therefore they are relatively easy to handle, transport, and to store. The only disadvantage of these kind of pesticide is that they are highly hazardous because they are highly concentrate. So they are highly they give very high toxicity. Similarly, there may be ready to use pesticides, and they are already in the solution form, and therefore they can directly used. And concentrate solution may be because they have to dilute first in order to apply them. We can also classify these pesticides on the basis of their mode of entry into the target substance. So on the basis of mode of entry, they can be classified as the systematic pesticide. Now the systematic pesticides are those which firstly absorbed by the plants and then they transfer to the untreated tissues or the animals. So these systematic insecticides, they're applied to the controlled pests such as lice or the fleas. The examples are 2,4-dichloro, phenoxyestic acid, glycophosphate. On the other hand, the non-systematic or the contact pesticides are those pesticides which act only when target pest RN came in its contact. So, for these non-systematic pesticides, the target molecule, it must came into physical contact with these pesticides. The another category is stomach poisoning and the stomach toxicant. So, as its name indicate, they enter into the pest's body or the target's body by through their digestive system and causes toxicity there and cause death. The example are such as malathion is a stomach poisoning or the stomach toxicant agent. Similarly, there may be a fumigant, so they are in mostly in the form of gases or in the vapors form, and they enters into the body of pest via a respiratory system and cause poisoning. Now, repellents are those that do not kill these substances, but they repel these pests. The another classification is based upon their mode of action. Now, on the basis of mode of action, we can classify them into the various categories. The most of times, these pesticides, they affect nervous system of the target substance, and they affect nervous system either by cholinesterase inhibition, such as organophosphate and carbamate insecticide. They bind to this enzyme cholinesterase and stop the effect of acetylcholine. Similarly, there may be some kind of insecticide. They may result in a acetylcholine receptor stimulation, and due to which they mimic the action of neurotransmitter acetylcholine, and that can result in a cause of death. Similarly, they can affect the chloride channel regulation, and when they affect the chloride channel regulation, they result in a dispersion in the nervous system, and that can result in a death. Similarly, there may be a sodium channel modulators that affect the sodium channel of this neurons, and it also affect the neurotransmitters. So some of these pesticides, they affect the growth and development hormones. So they affect the growth and development of these hormones, and by blocking these hormones, the pesticide, the pest do they are unable to grow, and therefore they dies. Similarly, some of the pesticides they act by stopping the energy production, and due to stopping the energy production within the microorganisms, uh, that result in a death. So these are the some of the classifications. So these are the some of the classifications in which we can classify these pesticides. So thank you watching for this lecture.